With so many new anime coming out this upcoming summer season, I thought it'd be worthwhile to just take a look and see what the good ones are. So let's go ahead and talk about that. What's up, guys? It's your boy, and today we're going to go over the upcoming summer 2023 anime. I'm not going to look too much at the sequels, but I am going to talk about them just very briefly, and then we're going to talk about the original shows that are coming out, and what I'm going to do is 3 flops, things that I think might not be good or not have great expectations for, and then 3 shows that I think are potentially going to be good and stand out and maybe worth your time. Just to say this up front, it's purely speculative. I have no idea. I could be completely wrong. These could be completely flipped. And I'm also not a manga reader, so I'm going into this completely blind. I'm not sure what's going to be good or what's going to be bad based on that either. So this is completely blind based on the trailers that I've seen up to this point and just the little research that I've done. Kind of how I feel about some shows, some that I think will be good, some that I think will be bad, and just some of the sequel thoughts that I have as well. But before I get into that, you already know what to do. There's a couple buttons below, and, you know, I would really appreciate if you clicked both of them. One says like, the other says subscribe. You know, it helps out a lot, and we all know I'm a very cool guy. Everybody loves me, and you know what? You can show it by clicking those 2 buttons. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into our content for today. Let's start with the sequels real quick. I'm just going to briefly touch on them because, honestly, if you're an anime fan and you are looking for shows for sequels and maybe to slow down on all the seasonal grind and maybe just watch a sequel to that show you watched a few seasons ago that was pretty good, but you haven't really had time to revisit, well, now's the time to maybe revisit an old show or watch a sequel to a show that you already love so much, because we've got some great show sequels coming out. Among them are Jujutsu Kaisen, 2nd season. We've got Mushoku Tensei. We've got Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War, Horimiya Peace, and Rent-A-Girlfriend's getting its 3rd season. We've also got Bungo Stray Dogs. So those are just a few of the sequels. There's more than that, but that's really the big-name players. You've just got a lot of really, really good sequels this season. Particularly for me, I'll probably watch Jujutsu Kaisen, Horimiya, and Rent-A-Girlfriend, just because those are shows that I've kept up with. I really want to watch Mushoku Tensei and watch the 1st season, get caught up on that as well. But in general, I mean, if you are a fan of any of those shows, I'm sure you're going to get more good content from any one of those that I've just mentioned. But the focus today is going to be on original shows. And I'm going to alternate between a show that I don't think is going to be good to a show that I do think is going to be good. And if I say that I don't think it's good, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's outright bad. It's more so just shows that I think are going to be kind of mid, right? Shows that may even have a unique element or plot point in them, but I just don't think are going to live up to maybe like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Maybe these are probably more like things that I would put in the 4 to 6 range and might not be worth your time. And so we're going to start off that with what I think is honestly the best of the mid, I guess. Because this show honestly has a kind of a cool premise, but I just can't really get past the aesthetic. It's funny, there's a trailer for it right now on my anime list, and the vibe they feel like they're going for is like a Chainsaw Man trailer or something like that. I don't know, it feels like they're going for different aesthetics here, and once I actually saw the animation of the show, it was different than what I kind of expected after having watched the trailer. That show is called Liar Liar, and it's actually, as I said, it's a pretty interesting kind of premise, which I'll read right now. It's at Academy Island, everything is settled through games, waged for a certain number of stars, with the strongest student being granted the ranking of 7 stars. Hiroto, a transfer student, unexpectedly beats the strongest empress and becomes the pseudo-strongest in the school. A mind game of lies and bluffs begins. Now, I probably won't read the synopsis for all of these, but I read it for that one because I really do think that there's something to that. But the animation style, the protagonist in particular, just looks really generic, and the characters don't look like they're bringing a lot new to the table. If I'm going to watch something like this that has a much kind of cooler aesthetic and is going to get me invested a little bit better, I definitely would go watch something like No Game, No Life if you haven't seen it before you're going to watch Liar Liar. Just because Liar Liar in premise is good, but I just think could add more in terms of design. And this is one that I really think could go either way, but I'm leaning more towards being a little mid at this point, unfortunately. All right, and the first one that I think actually could be pretty good. I believe the English title of this one is My Happy Marriage. Just in case, I'm going to try and pronounce the Japanese title. If I'm wrong, it's Watashi no Shiawase no, or Shiawase na Kekkon. And it is essentially about a girl who is supposed to see, like, spirits and things, like her family sees spirits and things, but she's like kind of the odd one out who doesn't. And then they kind of have a another family that comes in and a guy that she kind of falls in love with. Just the way that the premise kind of sets itself up really looks good. It looks like it kind of seamlessly puts in a romance plot to a fantasy story. The soundtrack, especially for the trailer, is really good. I particularly gravitate towards shows that have good soundtracks, and this show seems to be in that category. So I'm particularly interested to see where this one goes, because it could very well be a 3-episode rule, where 3 episodes, it's not really going anywhere, it's not moving, because it's a slower looking show. It looks like one that kind of paces itself out a bit more slowly. But I like the sound of it, the look of it, and the idea behind it. So that's my first pick for a potential fire show. We'll go fires and flops here. But that brings us to flop number 2, I think. And that is my unique skill makes me OP even at level 1. Do I really need to, honestly, do I need to explain why this show is not going to be one of the better ones this season? Okay, if you're here just for the isekai, like generic isekai of the season, have at it. I'm sure this one will be great for you, but for me, I've seen so many generic isekai season after season after season, to the point where I just see something like this and I'm like, come on. The 3 tags are literally harem isekai reincarnation on my anime list. And I feel like I've seen this show about 30 times in the past. And I know what you might say. I know you might say, well, Grant, it brings this element to things, or it looks different in this way. But in general, this isekai trend, I'm kind of hoping is on the out, because we've seen so many of them. I'm sure we'll see 1 or 2 on occasion each season, but hopefully the ones that we do get will actually be more worthwhile than something with a title like My Unique Skill Makes Me OP, even at level 1, because he might have a unique skill, but this genre is not really feeling so unique anymore. Alright, on to Fire Show number 2. And I'm gonna bring an isekai into it. We've got an isekai that I know it sounds ridiculous. This one, just absolutely, the plot is ridiculous. And I acknowledge that the plot is ridiculous. But man, it looks appealing. And that is Reborn as a Vending Machine, Now I Wander the Dungeon. I watched the trailer for this one, and I fully expected I'd just be like, oh, come on. You've got to be kidding me. But the way that they frame it is so kind of ironically done, right? Like, you watch this trailer, and I think this is one that, yes, could have some very by-the-book isekai elements, but if we want to talk about unique things being brought to isekai that stand out, I really think that this is going to be an entertaining show to watch. I really think people will enjoy seeing kind of the shenanigans that a vending machine could get into. And I feel weird even saying that, because that just doesn't feel like a plot that should exist, and that's why this is going to be entertaining. I mean, the trailer starts out, the isekai part starts out by the guy literally like crashing his car and getting crushed by a vending machine. That's why he becomes a vending machine. Is it going to objectively be the best show ever? Probably not, and I acknowledge that. Like, look, I don't think that this is going to be a 10 out of 10 show. But if it really leans into the irony of just how ridiculous its own plot is, and it sure looks like it does based on the trailers that I've seen and the overall look of it, I think it'll be worth watching. So that is my second of the Fire shows, and that brings us into the final of the 3 flops that I have picked out for this season. And that is Reign of the Seven Spellblades. And this looks like a typical like fantasy show. And from what I've read, it actually can be kind of dark and gritty and interesting in that sense. But I've seen a lot of shows kind of like with the isekai genre that are really kind of along this same kind of aesthetic, right? The same like formal palace look. And they make them every season. And so I don't want to say I'm grasping at straws with this one or that I'm really like forcing myself to put this one in the flops, but I think it's just solidly going to be mid, except for the people who like this genre, right? And that's the reason why they make these shows, right? Is because there's people who enjoy these genres, and I don't want to take that away. But for me, looking at the overall look and aesthetic of it, for one thing, the main character gives me Sid from Eminence and Shadow vibes. It just kind of reminds me of that, but I think it's also because there's just a lot of characters who have that same kind of vibe. So I don't see a lot in the animation style or the aesthetic of it that makes me go, I gotta watch that. The only thing that I will say that stands out to me that I quite enjoy is the fact that I think it's the only anime that I've seen in a while with the name Luther and Katie. Just some very generic American sounding names. So that just stood out to me a little bit. But overall, this is probably, if you like the genre, I say give it at least 3 episodes. It'll probably be the show for you if you like this genre. But for me, I probably won't have the time for it nor try to make the time. And that brings me into my last hit show, and I really think that this will be the big sleeper hit if it can catch on. And that is Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. And I'm going to read the plot synopsis for this one. It says here, and this is kind of interesting, episode 1 was actually previewed at a screening at Anime Expo, and regular broadcasting will begin on July 9th. So people have actually seen this a little bit and gotten an early preview of it. But I've not heard a lot of hubbub about it, so I'm gonna talk about the plot. Let's go ahead. In a trash-filled apartment, 24-year-old Akira Tendo watches a zombie movie with lifeless, envious eyes. After spending 3 hard years at an exploitative corporation in Japan, his spirit is broken. He can't even muster the courage to confess his feelings to his beautiful co-worker, Otori. Then, one morning, he stumbles upon his landlord eating lunch, which happens to be another tenant. The whole city's swarming with zombies, and even though he's running for his life, Akira has never felt more alive. Honestly, if I had to describe this one, right, I would say that this is the Sunset Overdrive of anime, right? Where it's just a guy who is living a crap life, and he's like, hey, but what if zombies? And they just went for it. The art style for this one looks really vibrant, the character design looks really interesting, and I really think if it's executed well and the plot synopsis makes it sound entertaining enough, if it can really get that kind of horror comedy vibe going in the right way, I think that this will be a sleeper hit of the season, and it's personally my top pick for sleeper hit of the season. So that title again is Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead, and it's not one that I've heard much about, so hopefully if you haven't heard of it before, it brings it to your attention. And that is my list of a few shows that I think will be good, some that I think may not be as good, and then my thoughts on some of the sequels. I hope you guys have enjoyed this look into some of the upcoming anime. I'm actually going to take next week off. It's technically for 4th of July, and I know it's not on a weekend, so I shouldn't have to take the week off, but I need a week off, so I'm going to take one, and I'm using 4th of July as an excuse. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you guys for the next one in a couple weeks from now. So that said, I'll see y'all next time.